chirp.
Hi, everyone. I'm here to moderate the behind-the-scenes studio owners panel. So I'm going to introduce everybody here in alphabetical order, including myself, who I'll be referring to in the third person. So I hope that's all going through. Okay, Alex, because it starts with A. Alex Wu is an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and founder and CEO of Kuku Studios, an indie animation studio based in Berkeley, California. He's a creator and executive producer of the Emmy Award-winning Netflix original series Go Go Corey Carson, and is currently directing In Your Dreams, an original animated feature for Netflix. He also directed the Student Academy Award-winning short Rex Steel, Nazi Smasher, and the Sundance New Frontier Selection VR short The Rose and I. Prior to founding Kuku Studios, Alex was a story artist at Pixar. His credits include Ratatouille, WALL-E, The Good Dinosaur, Finding Dory, and Incredibles 2. Kris Prynoski is an Emmy Award-winning president, founder, and owner of Titmouse, an animation production company with offices in LA, New York, and Vancouver. His animation career began in New York with his work on MTV shows such as Beavis and Butthead, Daria, and his Emmy-nominated creation, MTV's Downtown. Kris and his wife, Shannon, moved to LA to launch Titmouse, a home for passionate artists making high-quality cartoons. Prynoski has helped bring to life a string of hits, including Metalocalypse.
Pretty good.
Okay. Giant Black Dynamite, Super Jail, The Venture Brothers, Big Mouth, The Legend of Vox Machina, Star Trek, Lower Decks, and many more. He wears many hats, including executive producing, showrunning, and directing. Kris Wimberly. Kris is the co-founder and head of creative for studio Smokescreen, an independent Black-owned animation studio dedicated to leading significant changes in diversity and inclusion across the animation industry. The full-scale Los Angeles-based Bridge Studio, the first of its kind, is designed to elevate marginalized and underrepresented talent striving to break into roles on big studio projects. Kris is a classically trained director and storyboard artist who currently serves as director on Disney's hit animated series Firebuds and supervising director on Disney's upcoming Sophia the First Royal Magic, a sequel to the Emmy and Humanitas award-winning Sophia the First. Additional credits include Close Enough, Elena of Avalor, Curious George IV, Royal Monkey, SpongeBob SquarePants, and Teen Titans Go! A graduate of California State University, Fullerton, Kris worked as a custodian at Disneyland while working his way up the ranks to pursue his passion for animation. Maureen Fan, that's me, is the CEO, co-founder, and board director of Baobab Studios, the 10-time Emmy-winning and 3-time Annie-winning interactive animation company that sits at the intersection of Hollywood, games, and Silicon Valley to build franchisable IP and interactive worlds. Named Fast Company's 2018 Most Innovative Company, Baobab universes are being turned into films by Disney, series on premium streamers such as Disney Plus Max, books with Penguin Random House and Macmillan, and games, Roblox and Oculus. Baobab's creative leadership includes Eric Darnell, the director of Ants and all 4 Madagascar films, and Oz Not Sure, the producer of Moana and Raya. A product and strategy leader, Maureen helped to birth the social casual games revolution as Zynga's vice president of games, reporting directly as CEO, overseeing 6 studios, including the original Farmville franchise, which was $3 billion. She fueled rapid growth for Zynga to go public and subsequently scale by overseeing money, company financial and user metrics. I'm a business person here. All right, Mike Uwandi. Mike Uwandi is a highly regarded concept artist and art director with extensive experience in live action, animation, and video games, collaborating with top clients like Marvel Studios, Warner Brothers, ILM, Disney, CBS, Sony, and Fox. His work on projects such as Moon Knight, The Mandalorian Season 2, The Book of Boba Fett, and Westworld has earned Emmy nominations for outstanding sci-fi costume design. His portfolio also includes Blue Beetle, Star Wars, and the upcoming Captain America: Brave New World. He is also co-founder of 9B Collective, a trailblazing company focused on advancing inclusivity within the entertainment industry. He empowers underprivileged youth in Africa and LA County to explore creative careers. He also co-founded Bright Winter Studios, because you need 3 companies. How did you do that? It's painful. A production company that redefines world building by merging technology and creativity. And last but not least, Robert Kondo. Robert is co-founder and president of Tonko House, a San Francisco Bay Area-based studio focused on creating animated narrative content. Formerly an art director at Pixar Animation Studios on films such as Ratatouille and Toy Story 3. He lends his, where I met him, He lends his unique design sensibilities and passion for storytelling and co-director of the Academy-nominated short film, The Dam Keeper, the best short film ever made. Okay, originally from Southern California, Robert graduated from Art Center College of Design, right here in Pasadena, as an illustrator. He took on roles of both executive producer and production designer of Tonko House. This is highly anticipated event series, Oni, Thunder God's Tale. He is currently writing and illustrated Curiosities, a bedtime read-aloud book in partnership with First Second Books. Okay, so we've all started companies, and we're gonna make it feel roundtable-y, fireside chat, so you guys can also ask each other questions. But I go through several phases, so formation, being a creative person and also a business person, and then being an entrepreneur and the suffering that comes from being an entrepreneur. And then if we have time, we'll go to the audience, but I don't know, probably won't have time, but you can rush us outside. All right, formation. I just want to hear, this one's for all of you. Bobby sent out a moderation guide, said that I'm not allowed to ask questions of all of you because it takes too long. But I think this part is important. I would like to hear all of your
You're breaking the rules with the first question?
Yes, we're artists.
Didn't even
That's
wait.
what we do. That's what we do. But I would like to hear what made you decide to start your company and how exciting or awful it was. We're going to start with Mike.
Oh, man. Okay. So I think, like, for myself, getting into the industry was quite the tough situation, right? I knew what I wanted to do, and when I would show my work, people just assumed that I was already working. And, I went to Art Center as well, and I was like, all right, I'm trying to get into the industry. And I recognized that if I'm going through what I'm going through, then there must be multiple people going through what they're going through. And so one of the things that I've started to kind of pay attention to was recognizing that just because I didn't have the experience, people will be like, oh man, you're great. Are you working in AAA studios? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh. And they'll just leave it there. And I'm like, okay. So something I started to recognize was people's potential, like other people's potential, and seeing like, oh, you're almost there. You need to do this. You need to do that. And after kind of working across the board, video games, live action, and animation, I kind of started to build an eye for it. And then I would start to train up other artists who I know were going through the same thing. And so one of the things that helped create was unique designs, unique work. And especially since we're moving towards specificity in the industry, it's very helpful to have people who reflect the backgrounds or have an understanding or actually are fans of the content that is actually being created. So it was kind of like it was my own situation that I recognized became a need. And I was like, okay, well, that's a business.
Was it fun?
No, it wasn't.
Don't do it. That's the advice.
It was not fun. So I always knew that I was quite introverted, and I never realized how introverted I really was until I had to meet like 100-something artists, right? And like I'm working, and then we're like holding meetings to meet other artists every week. I think it was 2 a day for like the first year. And I was like, like seeing myself sink into my seat every time. And I didn't realize how exhausting it was. But I do think that one of the coolest parts was how the company came together. It was very organic. I remember listening to this channel called The Breakfast Club. And I know nothing about actors at all, even though I work in live action a lot. And I heard this guy talking about Art Center. And I was like, it sounds like a black person's voice. There's no way that someone else, there's no way another black person went to Art Center at that time. And I like look, and it's this guy, he's talking about like Art Center and his experience. And I was like, and I started listening. And I was like, I like this guy. Someday I'm gonna work with him. And so later on, we hold these meetings, and it's like 3 of us. And there's this guy who I have no idea who he is. And I asked my partner, I was like, hey, your friend, he's come to like 3 meetings. Who is he? And he was like, oh, Aldous? And I was like, that name sounds familiar. And I go into my like inspirational peoples folder, and I look, and it's the guy who I was saying I was gonna work with. And I was like, oh shit, I got psychic powers. So it was really cool. That was like one of my favorite parts of forming the company is that I called it, kinda.
How about you, Chris? Chris P. and Chris
Oh,
W.
man. I didn't have as much intention. My studio kind of came together by accident. I had moved from New York to LA and I decided to start a t-shirt company to sell t-shirts on the internet because I thought that would be fun. It's like, you can sell stuff on the internet now. PayPal, it's cool, right? In the year 2000. And so started doing that, but then because I came, I think my mic just...
We're going to get closer.
Hello? Did I turn it off? No, it just, all right, I am gonna, hello? Yeah, okay. So, you did. Battery's down on this one. We'll share. Anyway, you gotta hustle in New York a lot more. There's not as much work, so I was used to hustling, so I came out here, and even though I had jobs, like I was working directing at, I think, Nickelodeon when I started, I still tried to book commercials, and then I got to a point where I was like directing like 3 commercials and directing a pilot, and then I was like, what the fuck did I do? I can't do this all. Luckily, it was animation, so you didn't have to be on set or anything, but my wife was like, she was producing commercials, and she was like, I'll stop and I'll just produce your freelance work until we get over this hump. And then the hump never ended, and then like at some point, I was at Cartoon Network, and she's like, you gotta quit your job, and I was like, you don't just do that. Like, this is like, that's how we live and make money. And like, she's like, if you quit that job and focus on this, this'll be how we live and make money. And that's what happened. Exactly. And then we did, and then we just never had a plan, just like making cool shit. And that was our business plan. It's kind of a great business plan. Yeah. I'm gonna give this back.
So you listen to your wife. That's what everyone should always do. All right, Kris.
Pretty much I was working all over Burbank. I'm just going to skip all the other stuff. I know a lot of people probably picked up on the fact that I started as a custodian at Disneyland. Some stuff happened. And then I'm at Burbank, and I'm working at like all of the studios that you can think of, you know, Nickelodeon, Disney, Cartoon Network, Universal, Netflix, wherever. And usually I'm one of the first people that shows will call to ramp up because I have a really great skill set of establishing like a pattern or a runway at the beginning of a series so that all the other board artists will follow what I'm doing. As you heard, I'm classically like trained as a story person, so that is my wheelhouse. And so after working at all these studios, I'd done everything from, you know, climbing up the ladder, intern all the way. In fact, I interviewed as an intern with Shannon back in the day. And so I get all the way up to, you know, show creator and all this kind of stuff. I've created and sold shows to Nickelodeon, Disney, places like that. And then one day during the pandemic, right early on in the pandemic, I was going on a Father's Day hike with my brother, and we're discussing all types of Father's Day stuff and, you know, talking about our own late father. Eventually we get to the part of the conversation discussing, like, you know, how's work going? He's in the business arena, and I'm obviously in the creative space. So we're sharing a lot of things that sound very similar, and they're lining up with how shitty we're treated in our respective industries. And something to know about my brother, because this all feeds into the story, is that his wheelhouse is in mergers and acquisitions, which probably means nothing to anybody in this room except for the people on this couch. And he's done over $1.5 billion of that type of business, right? So he's made a lot of money for other people. And me working on shows like, what did you list? SpongeBob, Teen Titans Go, Curious George. I've made a lot of money for other people. And we're like, how is it that we've got $5 and they've got like empires built on the stuff that we know how to do, right? So anyway, he goes, how many Black-owned animation studios are there? So he's a business person. He comes up with the same questions. And I was like, 0? At least in LA, 0 at that time. And he's like, well, why don't you start one? You have all of this. And I'm like, you know, I've tried to do that before, and it's really hard, especially as a creative. People see you as a creative. They put you in a type of box that's really hard to get out of. And so he said, well, it's different. From the last time you've tried it, you have all of this experience under your belt. Now you have, like, people come to you to, like, get you, you know, acquire you. get offers to like, come work on this show, 2 seasons, no test, no contract, no nothing, or, really handsome contract, all that stuff. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll do it if you do it with me. So that way I essentially had a Roy to my Walt, right? So we were like Black Disney Brothers. And so we high five and we chest bump out on the trail and we're like, yeah, let's do it. And he's like, so why are we doing this? And I was like, well, because you told me to. And he's like, no, but why? And I thought, much like Mike here, I was like, it's amazing, this experience that I've gone through. I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people who have found hurdles or barriers to entry within the animation industry, and a lot of people who hit glass ceilings, all this kind of thing. And I know them because of, I had a podcast back in the day called The Animation Network, and I have met many, many, many people in my same experience. So what if we use this as a vehicle to help get people over those, or through those barriers and over those hurdles, by teaching them how to work at industry level pace, at industry level quality, because those are the 2 big killers that keep people out of the industry, right? They're not given the chance, and then when they are, they crash and burn because they weren't set up properly, they weren't educated in a way to help support them. So that's what we decided to do with our studio, is make like a boot camp so that I can essentially take all of my knowledge and experience and duplicate it times, hundreds of people. And years later, I'm sitting up here telling you about it.
Did you like starting your company?
So, I am a little different than many artists. I am not an introvert. I am an extrovert. And so there is a part of my brain that is satisfied by the busyness of starting a company. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that it's always a joyride, but there is a part of my brain that is satisfied by all the pieces and being like a conductor of this orchestra, that I'm making sure everything is working and setting up people to the best of their ability and bringing out something out of them that they weren't even sure they can do. And I'm supposed to be just an artist, right? But I've been able to do this other thing that is much, much, much bigger than myself, which is very nerve-wracking. So, yeah, so there's a balance there, but I, on the whole, enjoyed it.
Yes, do you ever feel like Kermit the Frog?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Definitely a lot of Kermit the Frog moments. But yeah.
Wait, I forgot to ask you, did you enjoy starting your company?
Oh, it came back to life. Nice. Yeah, I like it. It's hard, but I like it. It's on paper it looks really bad, but at least you're hanging out with artists all the time, right? And you get to make cartoons. I always tell people when we have a rough thing, you get a lot of notes or something like that. It's like, it's okay, here's the bad day we're having. We got a bunch of notes from the network, and we got paid to do a bunch of creative work, and they didn't like that creative work, so they're gonna keep paying us to do more creative work. Like, it's not so bad. We're not like, in at war or a surgeon or like a air traffic controller, where if we mess up, somebody's gonna die. It's like, if we mess up, that joke might not be as funny as it could have been.
Got it. I want to answer my own question, but it's gonna be fast. So I did it because I wanted to be like you all, like people with real talent, with creative, but because I'm not talented enough, I'm just like average talent, this is my only way to be with you guys. Seriously, my mom told me I was average, and she told me, she's like, if you want to be an artist, you have to be the top, and you are just okay. And so, my Asian mother, and so that seeped deep in my soul. And so I'm like, I guess I'll do business. So that's what I do. And so I started it honestly to be around creative people. And also because I did work at a big studio that you could find on my LinkedIn, but I'm not gonna say it. But I realized how incredibly hierarchical and political it can be at a big studio. And my personality doesn't suffer well, like keeping quiet. Actually, I am. I'm very introverted, but I have a lot of pride. So I thought I'd become an evil person if I stayed inside the environment for a long time. So that's why I'd given up on starting an animation studio and wanted to work with Robert, who rejected me. I'm kidding. I'm kidding, he didn't.
On the spot.
I did so many projects with him on the side, volunteering for free. But then I started a company because VR came about, and I saw that it was an opportunity because no one knew what they were doing in VR. Even Disney, with all its money, doesn't know what they're doing. So thought, okay, this makes sense. I can start something, and tricked a bunch of people to come work with me. But anyways, I am not a happy person, and therefore I can't say I enjoyed it. I'm just being honest. It's not that like I'm probably happier here doing this than other things. But one thing that I struggle with, which is going to be a question for you and other people, is balancing creativity and business. I did this job so I can be around creative people to be more creative, but I find myself being the one that's like faster, cheaper, and being the soulless suit. That's the opposite of what it is that I wanted to do. So I'm trying to figure out how to still have creativity in my life to feed that, so that I'm not unhappy. Okay.
Maureen is being very modest. She's not at all. So I started our studio in 2016 after working at Pixar for about 10 years. And I was very actually inspired by Robert and Dice. They were also working at Pixar around the same time. They left in 2014. Yeah, they started Tonko House after they had done, they'd created Dam Keeper, which got nominated for an Academy Award. And I think you guys were kind of the first to leave the nest and try to fly on your own. And I just was so inspired by them. At the same time, in my career, I had been at Pixar for about 10 years. I'd been working as a story artist on a bunch of movies. And I would sort of characterize my career there as like the first half I was working on some of the best movies that they had ever made. So the first film I worked on was Ratatouille, and then WALL-E. And then I started working on some films that were just not as inspiring. It was a lot of sequels. And I got into the movie industry because I wanted to work on stuff that I was really proud of and that was really inspiring to me. And that wasn't really happening in the latter half of my career at Pixar. And so I started looking around other studios to see if there were any other opportunities. But the other studios were doing stuff that was even worse than what Pixar was doing. So I thought, what am I going to do? And when I saw what Robert and Dice did to try and start this small animation studio to do stuff that was they were really passionate about, that they really cared about, I sort of took a page from their book and decided to jump ship and start a studio. I knew I couldn't do it alone, so I tapped two of my friends, and I was like, hey, do you guys want to do something crazy? Which is why our studio is called Kuku Studios. And do you want to leave and start our own studio? And they were crazy enough to want to do it. So we did. And I think the opportunity that was available in the market at that time was that Netflix was just starting to do originals. So they had done House of Cards, I think, in 2013. It was a smash hit. And I just thought, oh, the industry is like really starting to change. There's like a big shift happening here. And so whenever there's a transition in an industry, there's a lot of opportunity. So that's why around 2015, 2016, we decided that was the right time to jump ship and start our own place.
Wait. Did you enjoy?
Do I enjoy
it?
I do enjoy it. I mean, it's definitely
Liars! Oh, liars!
No, if I could have my way, I wouldn't work at all. I would just chill and watch movies.
Like Ali Wong.
But no, it's great. I think it's it's very challenging. It's very stimulating. There's a lot. You do a lot of like problem solving, and it's both creative problem solving, business problem solving, like personnel sort of problem solving. And I like solving problems, so it keeps my mind sort of active. So yeah, I really enjoy it.
That's awesome. Well, for me, I think it's a lot of similarity to a lot of people's stories up here. I was an art director at Pixar, and the couch was only so big. I started the company with Dice Utsumi, who would be up here if we had more couch. But because we started the company together, we had done a short film. The intention of this short film was really because these films are so huge, you're in the art department and you see such a narrow part of the filmmaking process. And we just wanted to see more. So we thought, hey, what if we just make a film together? So we took 3 months off, and we said, oh, the two of us, we could make a film. Of course, it wasn't a couple months. It was like a year, and it was a crew of 70 people. And so it grew. But every day of making that film was this sort of real excitement every morning, and then terror because everything would go wrong. We wouldn't have the right software. We had to go get it ourselves. We had to, figure out a space, and we didn't have a space. And there was something about that took us back to the moment when, when you start something, like you start at school and you're like so excited and you're taking notes furiously and want to learn everything. And that kind of plateaus. You graduate, you start in the industry, you're like so excited. And we realized through doing that we had sort of gotten to a place in our career where we could see like what it looked like, the path looked like down this one path. And the other was sort of a path together where we didn't quite know what that was going to be. And at the same time, we just asked ourselves, like, why would we do this? Why are we in animation? Why would we do this together? Why do we want to tell our stories? And so we just spent a lot of time talking about that. And at a certain point, it just became inevitable that to do any of the things we really want to do, we've got to leave. We've got to go do our own thing. Because we loved Pixar. Pixar was a place that was built by Steve Jobs and John Lasseter. And we felt like we were living in someone else's house. And we got to see everything they did, but it wasn't who we were. And so with that, no plan, no idea how we were going to do, what we were going to do, kind of be like, hey, it'd be cool to hang out and make stuff. We left. And I think, for us, I would say it was fun. And the reason why is because we had a lot of naivete. And naivete is this like superpower in the beginning, where you just feel like, oh my gosh, let's just make art every day. Dice and I would sit in a room, just the two of us, painting for like hours in the morning. I think about that now, I'm like, that is ridiculous. Like we need to be doing so many other things. But we loved it. It was just so much fun. We did Schoolism was our first project. We wanted to do something that was giving back to the community. We wanted to work with Bobby. Bobby was just starting out and trying these things. Alex had already done it, and we were like, oh, well, they did a cool thing. And so that was like the first project we did. And again, we had no idea like what we were doing, and we still don't. I think that's the one thing that hasn't really changed is the initial feeling of that, like feeling of we don't really know what we're doing. We just know what we're excited about. Hasn't really changed. And I think in that way it's fun. There's mountains and valleys, but it's overall, the beginning was fun.
That's something that my brother always said to me is like, when things get really hard and I'm like, dude, what do we do? And he's like, I don't know. he's like,
that's what he always says?
Yeah. Well, I think he knows more than he's letting me think, but he wants me to think harder. And then he's like, we're literally flying the airplane as we're building it. And I'm like, see, you're creative. Like I was like, that means a lot. But it makes me think of what you just said. It's like, yeah, you don't know sometimes what the hell you're doing, but you got to figure it out because 50 other people are looking at you like, so what are we doing,
How did you guys get money to start your companies? I want to start with you two.
Which two?
Who?
Chris's, the two Chris's.
Oh, the two Chris's.
Yeah.
Just by working. Like I think I started during like one of the early like .com booms. It was like the first flash boom where they had like Icebox, and Sticky Flicks was a company that a friend of mine founded with venture capital money, and Shannon actually worked there as a color stylist. And I saw them get a really nice space in Hollywood that was like, had animation legacy. It was like Bob Clampett's studio, and it was Klasky Chupo's first studio, and they rented it, and it's like, this is gonna be our animation studio. And they got a fancy fridge, and it was stocked with like VC-funded like snacks, and they built a sound booth and all this stuff. And then like a year and a half later, the VCs came in and said, are you profitable? And they were like, nope. And then they just took it all away from them. And they're like, can we keep keep some of this stuff? And they're like, we're selling every pencil, we're selling everything, we're gonna recoup our investment, cover our losses. And it really made me think, like, I'm gonna avoid taking any kind of investment at all costs, because even people I know who've had a level of success at their company and sold or taken a majority investment are like, it's not the same. You're working for somebody else. So we value the ability to just make stupid decisions, which, that's probably way too long of an answer.
Mine actually overlaps a lot with that because, again, having a brother who understands business, I was like, great, so how do we get money to get started? And he's like, we don't. And I was like, what? And he said, if we're going to spend $1, you got to go earn $1. And I was like, oh, so if you're familiar with the term bootstrap, that's what Studio Smokescreen is. We bootstrapped from the beginning. So we didn't take any investments, any loans, any business loans. We didn't do any sort of thing like that. So every choice that we make, we are free and clear to make. But that also means, we answer to only ourselves. And so with that, a lot of our early dollars came from me not being entirely honest with some of our clients when they were like, hey, can you come and do this? And I'm like, you know what? Kris Wimberly, would love to, but my Disney contract won't let me. So if you hire me through my company, Studio Smokescreen, then I can work for you. And they're like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. And then when they did that, I was like, okay, you three, I'm going to rough the boards, you clean them, do revisions, whatever, we'll send it out. And they're like, wow, you're so fast. And I'm like, uh-huh. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, great, we'll throw you more work when it comes. And that's literally how we just started. And then every dollar that came in, we invested it back into the studio, which works only for so long because then you have a lot of people that you need to feed and help them pay their rent. So it gets different after a little while, but that's where our early money came from.
Cool. Okay, Mike, Alex, and Robert, you guys are all, in a way, artists and also business founders. So which means you have to think about the business, even though your brain was artist first, I guess. How do you balance the business side and the creative side? Did you find someone to just pawn it off on, or you have to think about it? Yeah, how do you balance that?
So that's an interesting answer for me because I'm Nigerian and generally we're pretty known to be very business savvy, and I didn't notice that until this all happened. And I'm so cheap. Everything, I'm down to the dollar. I'm if we do this and blah, blah, blah. Literally we'll be in conversations and I'm yeah, so if we do this and blah, 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 and I'm doing the math as we're speaking. I'm we'll make this much by the end of the year, and that will then lead to this and that and that. So I naturally think that way, and I've thought that way my whole career. Now it's doing it for more people, which is fun. I don't know why I like doing math. I hate doing math on paper, but I love doing math for other things. So it kind of ended up being one of those situations where I naturally kind of navigated it in a very business way, even for my career. And so it wasn't that much of a pivot, to be honest.
Awesome. Are you happy with the balance that you have right now?
Very.
Okay, that's awesome. How about you two?
Yeah, I'm not from Nigeria, but I'm from Hong Kong, and we're also known as very business savvy is the politically correct term. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I focus a lot of my time and energy on the creative because really, if you can't produce good work, you don't have a business. So I focus a lot of my energy there. The business side of it, it's really pretty simple. I think you just don't want to spend more than you earn. I mean, of course, sometimes you have to spend money before you get any income, and then you just try to manage your costs as much as possible. But I do spend a lot of my time focusing more on creating products that we can sell, because that's really the core of the business. So it's not really, to me, that they're sort of one and the same. I don't sort of see them as two different hats.
Wow, I am not business savvy at all. one of the things that happened in the course of Tonko House was that, Dice and I started the studio together. We also thought we would do everything together. So we directed our first film together. We thought we'd run the business together. But one of the most important things about doing business is timing. And the most, we talk about technology saving money, pipeline saving money, but the most cost-saving thing, to be honest, is somebody who can make a decision and execute quickly. And so when there's two of us, we'd wait till every Saturday, because we love doing our art during the week, and then on Saturday we'd meet. That means if someone wanted to buy a box of paper clips, it would wait till Saturday. We'd make a decision, and then it was just so slow. And so we kind of decided that Dice would sort of dedicate, at that point, become sole director, and I would become president of the company, and I would, work on the business aspect of things. And the first thing that I learned was that I was way out of my depth. I didn't think so simply. I think as a designer, I understood, well, the simplest design is the best, but business to me just looked like gobbledygook all over the place. So one of our head of development and production, Megan Bartle Hansel, had kept saying this thing that leadership is learning how to ask for help. And that's something that I really prescribe to. And so for me, running the company started to become about learning how and when to ask for help. And that's kind of how our business kind of got to a place to sustain where it is just learning to ask for help. Because I was worried if I ask for help, everyone's going to know what I don't know. And that would suck. But the truth is that I found that when you ask people for help, what they see is actually, wow, you think I know that. You're sort of acknowledging that I can give you something that you don't have. And the focus really isn't on you, it's on them. And I think it's the best way to exhibit trust. I think it's the best way to build relationships, is learning how to ask help. So in that way, I think, that's where that freed up time for me to get back into creative. So for the last year, I've been back in development, writing, creating my own projects, because of everyone around me.
Oh, and something I want to add to that. One of the best decisions we made was to make sure that we stayed as small for as long as possible. Because I've seen other companies where they expand too quickly. It's very hard to kind of take that back. And so I think that one of the things that we had is like kind of a roadmap of like goals that eventually like we wanted to get to, but you have to do this for so long until you can do that. I very much think in the terms of like RPGs. So it's like, that's the way I think. So it's like, we must get to level 5 before we're able to hold that sword, right? You must get to level 10 before you're able to do this. Only this person can have a shield and a sword. This person can hold a wand. So we're like very much like that in the sense of like, we're like, okay, we want to do IP. Well, we can't do that until we have this much money in the account, until we understand this process and this pipeline, and we've worked in different parts of the pipeline to then understand, like, okay, this is how we can do that efficiently, rather than jumping straight into the water and then, like, drowning, because that's pretty tough to get out of, honestly. And I've seen a lot of situations where, there's a possibility of, like, oh, do we want a studio? Like, do we actually want, like, a brick and mortar? And it's like, well, that's expensive. We can do this, with just working remote. We work with a lot of people who are out of country, so why have a studio, right? Or even in the sense of like, we want to do an IP. Okay, so how much of that do we actually need, and how much can we farm out to other companies to like take it on for us beyond us like helping with the visual development? So things like that, I think, was like really, really essential for us.
I think you should come run my company. That would be, and then I could go to sleep, and that would be great. One thing, you were saying asking for help. One of the reasons why, actually 3 of us, because we're Bay Area based, except Robert has abandoned us now. But he's down here, so you can find him down here. We formed the Bay Area Animation Alliance is because all founders kind of go through the same things and have the same issues. And so it's really helpful to be able to ask each other, because every single company is at a different phase, and you can cry to each other and ask for help, which I do a lot. Okay, this is for you two now. You guys, both your companies have so many projects. How do you scale yourselves, especially since you guys are the creative visionaries? Doesn't everyone want your time? How do you scale yourself?
I think that asking for help thing is really key. Like I found early on, it's like getting people who are better than you at their very specific discipline is so good, because then you don't have to manage them so much. It's like trust, give somebody trust. That's what I felt, it was really helpful to work on so many Adult Swim shows, because Mike Lazo over there ran that network so different from any other network, where most networks try to control the process or want to give a bunch of notes. And Mike Lazo would basically hire people he thought could do the job, and you'd show him the first couple scripts and then be like, all right, just go. And then he'd go. And that's where I find it's the easiest way to scale, is bring in people who you think are right for that job and let them do their job.
So it's very interesting. There's a few different ways I would answer this, but one of them is I do a lot by nature. Like, it's just who I am. However, something that I really do enjoy is like I said, RPG game, looking at someone and people and saying like, how can I like build them past where they think they can go? And so like one of the things, like my personal dream was to be an A&R in music. My dad's dream for me was to be a doctor, right? So I remember like just really loving talking to people. I like have this thing about nerding out. I don't care what it is. Whatever someone's interested in, I'm like interested in it for them. And when I speak with certain artists, I would kind of see the potential of like, they'll say, I want to work in the industry as an artist. I'm like, I think you can be a little bit more than that. I won't always tell them that, but I'm kind of like building them towards that direction. And so there came a time where some of the early artists that I started with, we were working on a lot. And generally, for a lot of the animation projects, I was like taking the helm on those. And it got to a point where I was working, I think, like 4 jobs for the company and then also 2 jobs for myself. And I was like, okay, I think I'm underwater. But luckily, there was a few artists that I've kind of built up their sensibilities enough by kind of giving them the opportunities to work on different types of projects, where I was like, okay, I think you can actually handle this. I remember one of the artists was like, I don't know why you think this. Like, I was like, no, you can be the art director for this. And he's like, why me? And I was like, dude, I've seen what you've been doing this whole time. I know you can do it. I just have faith in you. And he's like, well, I guess at this point, if you have faith in me, I'll just do it. But he was like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm really scared. And I was like, no, dude, you'll be fine. And he ended up, I feel like, doing a better job than I did. He killed it, and he was so surprised because he's like, I would have never even taken the chance to do this. It was for the Little Mermaid animated show that came out recently. And he killed it, and he's like, everyone loved him on both sides, because that's the other side. It's like, for art direction is not just being a good artist. And I think that that's one of the things that people kind of get wrong. It's also being able to communicate with the other side, which is the client, understand their needs, because they don't always know what they actually want, and then being able to communicate with your team, seeing where their head is at. It's like being a coach more than it is just being like an artist. And so this guy had that kind of skill set, and he like did great. And a lot of the artists that I work with, I very much put them into leadership positions by just kind of recognizing where they're going or where their trajectory is, and it makes my life way easier.
That is a good point about like having like the ability to get the best work out of people is a better skill than being the best like technical drafts person on the crew. And we made mistakes early on at Titmouse by like, they're the best. We're gonna make them an art director, and then it's like, what happened? It's like he's just encouraging them to like take longer and make their backgrounds better. It's like no. But yeah, it's like communication is the key for art direction.
Have any of your companies ever been at near death? And if so, how did you deal with it? You don't have to answer if you don't want. This is a volunteer
I can
question.
speak to it a little bit. I think that 9B, for one point, most people assumed that we were more live action than we were, when we're predominantly video games and animation. And when the live action side took a real hit, and then video games took a hit during that same year, which was just last year, I think there was like more than a few thousand layoffs within like the first 3 months of the year. And so across the board, everyone was taking a hit. But luckily, we were kind of thinking ahead, and we weren't spending a bunch of money. So we started to curtail the IP division of our company and started like employing people that way. But film pays a lot, right? And when that took a hit, we had to like very much slow down, pivot, and like kind of come up with a new game plan. And one of the big things for myself even, and I'm sure for my partners, it's when something happens to you that you didn't like, you have to understand exactly why and like make sure that that doesn't happen again. And so I would say like during the earlier part of the year, it was a real struggle with pretty much video games and live action being hit pretty hard. And then animation was kind of slowing up because of the strikes and stuff like that. But we were like, uh-oh, I can see where this is going if we don't hurry up and pivot. And so luckily with good partners, we were able to kind of like do that.
Yeah, this is same for us, like, because, you know, we're still in our infancy stage of growing this company, which has been now like a handful of years. But, you know, because of how we were born out of the pandemic, like we've survived literally everything, like social injustice, like ups and downs. We've had like bank close. Remember when all the bank closure? Probably none of you remember. You remember when all the banks were closing up and everything? We were next. Our bank was next. We had to move all of our money to another bank. Like we've survived. We're like the I don't know. Cockroaches of the industry. Like we survive.
I knew you were going to say that.
We keep. I didn't want to because I'm like, this doesn't sound as great as with the analogy I want it to be. But we keep skirting like underneath everything and like getting through it. But it is about pivoting. And the thing about being near death is it's extremely scary because you're like, maybe everybody in your company thinks everything is great and good, and they're supposed to, right? Because they believe in you, they trust you, and you know they need to pay their rent, and so you need to make sure that they can do that. But ultimately, what I learned was you're not a company until you go through those growing pains, right? And then one of the things that made me realize that was in the news. And now Disney let go 40,000 people. I was like, oh shit, well, we only let go 4. So, you know, but it is part of the process. And then as soon as we're able to, we go scoop those people back up. Hey, we're good again. You know, our projects, we got 3 more new projects. We'll get all of these people. So there is a fluctuation game that does happen, and you have to have a different mindset about what that means and not just be a sensitive artist. No offense to artists, obviously. But like you can't just think about it that way. You have to think about the strategy and the gameplay behind it and think several moves ahead and what pivot will get you across this trench to the next thing and the next thing. And then you turn around a while later and you're like, holy shit, like remember that one time back then that we survived, and it just keeps happening. It's a cycle. And that's why Maureen is saying, like, it is hard, and you can be an unhappy person, and there is crying. I'm not gonna lie, I've cried about stuff because I tell my wife, I'm like, I feel like a fucking answer box. Like everybody comes to me and they ask me what I think, or they ask me what they want me to do, and I'm like, that's why I hired you. Like I gave you money, you go answer that question. Like, yeah, but how do you want me to answer it? I'm like, okay, and then I'll think of how to do it, and then give them more money to go do it, and I'm like, what? This doesn't feel the right way. But anyway, so there is a lot of that comes with the ups and downs or ebbs and flows, however you want to look at it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it was in the early days of Titmouse, we were continuously on the brink of like going out of business. It's just tough to, cash flow and things you have to worry about. It's like we have 8 jobs. It's like, yeah, but they don't pay until like 9 months later. And you have to pay all these artists in the meantime. But I think it's the best thing possible for a business to go through. I feel like still at our scale now, I'm afraid of us going out of business like every day. I'm like, how are we going to survive? And they're like, we're cool. Our like head of finance is like, we're okay right now. And I'm like, but are we going to be okay 2 months from now or something? So it just keeps you sharp to another reason to not take huge investment is you never get that that like I went through a really horrible time with these people and we learned from it. You know, it's I recommend everybody to almost go out of business if you start a studio. It's great.
No, seriously, because I think like one of the funny things, my mom, she has so many quotables. My dad does too in a very African way, but like my mom will say, you know, in regards to friendship, if you've been friends with someone and you guys never get into an argument or, you know, disagreement, then somebody's lying, right? And when it comes to companies, you don't really have a business, in my opinion, until you go through a really tough time, because you learn more during those tough times than you do during the coast times, right? And I think that during those times, we've went through a lot of hard times, personally, as well as through the business, like itself, and like, you know, the general landscape of what the industry is going through. And we've learned so much that I'm like, wow, we also started it during COVID. So it's like, we've learned so many things and so many different hard times, as Kris has mentioned, that we were like, oh wow, we've gotten a lot of information in those 4 to 5 years that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise, you know? So it's been really helpful, and I think it's great to learn that very early, but then also when you know, see Disney like laying off 40,000 people, whatever, like when you see that and you recognize that you're still standing, you're like, okay, we're doing something right, you know, like at the dismay of others, of course, but you understand that it's really important to like just keep on staying afloat and making sure that you pivot in the right way, but also going through those struggles and making sure that you address the struggle. Because I think when it comes to business in general, or people, socializing, whatever, people can kind of steer away from like the hard conversations and just kind of let things go. And with business, you can't do that. It's very much like a baby, you know? You're taking care of that baby and making sure that you're keeping it alive. And there's always gonna be people from the outside who wanna touch your baby without washing their hands and, and stuff like that. You're like, no, get away from my baby. But you always have to make sure that you're looking ahead of the game and keeping it alive and making sure that it gets to grow, you know, really strong. And so by going through those struggles and persevering, it kind of becomes that.
Robert, I have a question about why do people choose to join these indie studios rather than a big studio like a Disney or DreamWorks? And then also the second part of that question, what do you look for? Like, is it the same type of person that would work well there, would work well at a place like Tonko?
I mean, at least for us, I feel like we try to celebrate being an indie studio, and that's almost our beacon. So, you know, if you've been at the big studios, you know that we're probably not going to be able to necessarily compensate, you know, across a benefits package and all that sort of stuff at that same level. Tonko House is also fully remote. So, you know, if you want to come in and hang and have a studio, it's probably not us. But there's other people and artists in the world that are like, oh, remote, sign me up. And so I think a lot of the people that want to sort of join an indie studio have gotten to a point in their career or their sort of view of the world where they want to acknowledge the levels of risk they're willing to take. I think a lot of people, not to blanket, but I think like sometimes the big studio feels like there's no risk, but to the point of the layoffs and the everything, I don't think it's any safer. I think you can kind of, if that's what your sort of artistic spirit and mind needs, is that sort of illusion of security, I think great. But I think the indie studio, to me, is just a wholly different experience. It's a smaller shop. You know, I think our artists get to see a lot more. Dice and I know Kuku's a bit like this too, and Baobab, but like, we all sit in the same room. So if I'm, you know, taking a call with our lawyers or whatever, they catch glimpses of that, right? Like, and I think so, for me, I think that, you know, the kind of artists or people that, you know, are looking to join an indie studio like ours sort of understand the risk. And I think in the same way, that's who we look for. That's what we kind of interview for. We kind of try to understand how aware are you of what you're stepping into, how aware are you of what you want, not just in terms of compensation, but growth. Like, what do you think that our studio can provide you? Because I'm always looking for the win-win. And if we can find that, it's amazing. And I think at a bigger studio, you know, when we were hiring, you are your machine is just so much bigger. So sometimes you're looking for a cog that just is so specific, a right skill set that fits this one thing. At a smaller studio, it's like, hey, you got to take out the trash, and you got to pitch the stuff, and you got to make the stuff. And so I feel like that's attractive to a lot. I mean, that was attractive to Dice and I. I think it's attractive to everyone that's up here. I think we're people that want to be accountable for how we're contributing and how we're taking.
Alex, take us home. You get the hardest question. No. Okay, so industries, it's a difficult time in the industry. And so I want to ask, how does an independent studio navigate through the difficult time? And then also, I'm guessing a lot of people here, how many of you guys are trying to get jobs in the industry? Okay, and how many of you are transitioning jobs? Okay. Advice that you have on, in this shitty time, how does one get a job or transition?
I wish I had the answer to that question. I don't know. I think it is a very, very difficult time. We just finished our first feature film for Netflix. We delivered it in August. And we were hoping, thanks. We were really hoping that after the delivery, Netflix would turn around and say, hey, great, here's another project, or we're going to greenlight another idea of yours. But that didn't happen. Our studio, we were at the height of our studio, we were at about 70 people. And after the film wrapped, I mean, we basically had to wrap all of our team because we didn't have a project for them to go on to. So, it is a very difficult time right now. The way that we sort of try to navigate it is we try to, manage our finances really well. Talking about near-death experiences for our studio, for the first 2 years, we didn't have any business coming in. And then, fortunately, we got our first project. But that first 2 years, I was hyper vigilant about what money was coming in, where it was going out. And so I constantly know what our runway is, basically, like how long we have until we die. And so we are just very mindful about that, and I think you can do that on a personal level. Obviously, everybody, most people do that. And then we just try to, make work that is so compelling that even in times of a bust, the studios can't ignore the quality of the work, and they're still willing to take a bet on us. So that's how we approach it. I don't know if that's advice that I would give if it's applicable to all of you. I think it is. As an individual, you basically want to make yourself so compelling as an individual artist that people, even in times of a downturn, they can't ignore you. So that it's easier said than done, but that's how we approach it.
I have a last piece of advice. I say, screw the industry. Instead, ignore all the gatekeepers, right? Right now, you need to ask, the streamers or someone, please, will you take my thing? And they don't like original stuff right now because their bosses are freaking out because their businesses aren't good. So there's also empathy, right, for all the business people like me who basically can't figure out how to make it work right now. So their bosses don't know how to make money, and then their industry is full of fear right now because they're trying to figure out what's working. And a lot of this is because of over-exuberance with the streamers, right? Everyone's like, I want my own channel, and I'm going to say yes to 20,000 projects. Well, you spread those eyeballs across 20,000 projects. How many of them are going to make money? So it is the right understanding, business-wise, why this contraction had to happen. But you don't need to ask these people to let you in because they're mostly buying existing or established IP. I would use technology. This is what Gen Z did, right? YouTube is bigger than the streamers. And Gen Z was like, screw this, I can make my own movies with my phone and edit them quickly and put them up. I don't need this fancy cameras with a bajillion people crew. They're like, I can do it myself and make a name for myself. So you guys don't need to ask anybody. You could just use your UGC tools and then put it up there and then disintermediate everyone because you get you get less marketing, right? It's really nice when you're with Disney because they like will put a lot of money towards marketing you, and they can sell your plushie toys. But in trade-off with YouTube, you get a larger market, it's more eyeballs, and you have control over your IP. So that's what I would do. Yeah.
And another lesson based on that, wise words. If you are waiting, this goes for like your career, business, anything. If you're waiting until you have everything, then you're already too late, right? So if you already have that feeling that you should be starting something, just do it. Trust me on that. I can guarantee you, just move towards what you want to do. And if you're moving with passion, you're going to be already setting yourself apart from like anyone else. And that's whether, like I said, it's business, your own personal work, whatever it is, just do what you're feeling. People can feel things. They don't always see things, but they can feel it. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about things for the future.
Thank you, everyone.